Welcome to Flosstube and Variety Show number 57. Today is unbelievably the last day of September 2022. I don't know where the time goes. Don't get it. September 30th. And welcome. I'm Emily Williams. Sorry, I haven't done this in a while, as you can tell. I'm Emily Williams in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. And maybe you can see outside through the window behind me, the wind ruffling up the leaves. We are expecting some stormy weather, I think, in the afternoon and evening from Hurricane Ian. So I thought I'd try to get this video done and uploaded before we get bad weather. We rarely have a power outage here. And even though our lot is a little bit low in the neighborhood, we've not had flooding in our yard. So I'm not really worried about anything, but you never know. It's been also a while since we've had an actual tropical system that has dropped much rain here. Last year, it didn't really amount to much, any of the hurricanes that came. That's okay, it's fine. Okay, Flosstube because it's about cross stitch, and Variety Show because it's about something else. So let's start on cross stitch. Since it's been a while, I'm thinking 3 weeks maybe since I posted a video, you should expect that I've accomplished something, and I have. We were away for part of that time, but first I'm going to show you Eliza Stringer age 6, which is the exclusive little sampler reproduction by Hands Across the Sea was given to the people who are signed up for the Great British Sampler Weekend in 2023, which is a year from now. A year from now, that will be taking place. So I have done another line of alphabet, I think, since I last saw you, finished out the borders between the alphabet lines and making progress. As I've mentioned before, this is 46 count linen and 100.3 Au Ver A Soie silk. I like it. I like the result. I don't love stitching on this particular linen. It may be because it's too flimsy to suit me. You know, I'm used to Aida, and Aida is quite robust, let's say. But it's beautiful how it's turning out. This is 2x2 stitch art. It's called Sampler number 193. It's a really catchy name. And I started at the center, been moving toward the edge, and this is what I have. It's square, as you saw, so I'm not up to the edge yet. There's another 2 or 3 inches above this. Once I get to the edge, I'll probably work my way to the corners and then, I don't know what, maybe start in the center again. This is 16 count Aida by Zweigart, white, it's just white, and it's DMC number 777, a nice darkish red color. That is fun. It's a great thing to do when you want to do some cross stitch, but you don't want to do a lot of meticulous thinking. Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather. Since my last video, I have done 2,000 stitches, which, if you didn't watch the last video, there's no way you're gonna, even if you watch the last video, even if you go back and tune into it, you probably won't be able to tell. And it's very hard in this light. I'm sorry about this, but I've done quite a bit in that speckly area there, confetti area. There's a woman there and some flowers. And I've done quite a bit in the rose bushes up above. And then down here, I just needed, you know, need a break sometimes from certain colors. So needed a break from green. So I moved down to gray. That's exciting. And between the gridding and the light, it's hard to tell, but it's coming. I am not quite 50% overall. I find it hard to believe that I will get 22,000 stitches in on this year, because in order to do that, I think I'd have to do 12,000 stitches roughly between now and the end of the year, which would be 4,000 a month. Or maybe it was 13,000 stitches, just over 4,000 a month. And that is not going to happen. I'm sure it won't. And then the final thing I'll show today is, the final cross stitch thing, is this purple sampler. So what I did recently is I added these. This border is almost complete. You see I still have a line of dark purple to put in there. And then I'm starting a border of little leaves with berries that will go along there. And I'll just move it slowly so you can see what's above it. Again, I'm making this up, as those of you who've been watching for a while know. Some things I'm charting myself, like I charted the little tent myself, and the loon and the portage guy and the moose I charted myself, and I made these paddles into more canoe paddle-like paddles. And so far, oh, and this little border I charted myself. I didn't even chart it. I just made it up. I just stitched it. So, and I am going to put some things in here. This is not going to be all wide open white space. I have an idea of what I'll put in there. One thing that might go in there, which I have partially figured out. I just have to see about the size of it. And you can hear the ice maker in the background. Normally, or sometimes, I remember to turn that off. So the stitch so far is about 15 inches in length. And my ultimate goal is between 24 and 30 inches. And I have that border to finish, a lowercase alphabet group to put in, a couple of borders, a couple more motifs probably. Probably the last group of motifs will just be traditional sampler motifs, which, by the way, I'm getting a lot of my items from this book, Ultimate Sampler Motif Source Book by Brenda Keys. It's a wealth of information. And then I'll do another couple borders beneath that, another set of motifs, and then I'll be done. So part of what I'm doing, and one of the reasons I put this little berry-oriented border in down here, whoops, upside down. So this is, you know, leaves with a little purple berry. I don't know how that shows up, but it's green leaves and vine with a purple berry, is to pick up the berries and leaves up here, even though there's no green up here. And I also feel that at the bottom, it's going to require, to balance it, it's going to require some narrow border, a wide border with some airiness to it, and a narrow border to sort of finish it, to give it the right weight, and maybe an extra medium border down there to give it a weight that says this is the bottom. So I'm sort of thinking about that. And when I finish this border, I might do just a 1 line or 2 line little border before I do the lowercase alphabet. Then I'll do a few borders, about this many, maybe, 2 or 3 inches of borders before some more motifs, and then that final section, which I think that final group of borders is going to be important to get it the right proportion and make it look nice when it's finished. So that's all I'm going to show you in the way of cross stitch. I know that some of you have heard about this quilt, which sometimes has an expletive associated with it. but not really. A lot. More than you want to hear about this quilt, because this is not a quilting video channel, except that it is, because I do quilting. I won't even, I'm not going to put a picture in this time, because hopefully by the next time I make a video, I will be possibly finished with the quilt. I have been stitching on it 4 hours a day, most days, except for one day I only did 1 hour. We had a bunch of things going on here. And yesterday I did just over 4 hours, but the day before it was only 3 hours. And I usually do it in a 2-hour chunk. I'll do 2 hours, and I'll do something else, and then I'll come back and do 2 hours. And then sometimes I come back for a third session of half an hour or something. And I am definitely making progress. I mean, clearly I'm making progress. I'm definitely close to the end. I am practically counting the hours between now and around 3 o'clock next Sunday, week from Sunday. I mean, October 9th is the date, which is the time that I have to get in the car in order to take it to the fairgrounds in Raleigh, North Carolina, and drop it off for the state fair. But again, I'm not going to show a picture this week. I hope that possibly by next week it will be finished. And it's funny, back years ago when my friend Cindy and I've spoken of Cindy before, and if you want to see Cindy, you can check out our quilting video from maybe 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago. Anyway, Cindy and I are quilting buddies. We went to the quilt show in Hampton, Virginia, as we do almost every year. We try to go. And we were looking at something, I can't even remember what it was, and the salesperson who was standing there said, we were debating with each other whether we should spend the money for whatever it was. And the salesperson said, "So do you ladies smoke?" And we said, "No." And he said, "Well, think of all the money you're saving by not smoking. So you can afford this." And so we have laughed about that over all these years. And let me tell you, we have spent the money we save by not smoking many times over. Many times over. And unconsciously, we'll say, well, I don't really need that fat quarter bundle, but I don't smoke, so I might as well buy it. Things like that. So in terms of this quilt that I've been spending so much time on, I sort of fantasize while I'm working on it about all the things I'm going to do when this quilt is finished. And I feel as if I'm going to need each day to have 36 hours in it in order to do all the things I think I'm going to do with the time I won't be spending on this quilt. So we'll see what comes of all of that. Another thing that I've been thinking about as September ends, so part of my decisions about what I cross-stitch has to do with having examples of different types of cross-stitch to work on. For instance, this purple sampler that I'm working on is a certain kind of stitching, and it requires a certain kind of thoughts. Because I'm making it up as I go along, I have to have some creative moments to consider what I might do next. The red sampler with the, sampler number 193, the big pillow top in red on white Aida, is very simple, straightforward stitching. And when that gets finished, which I'm 15% finished with it or something, I'm not close to finishing it, but it's a certain type of stitching, and I will want to do another piece that is similar to that in the type of stitching that it is. Under the Roof of Blue Ionian Weather, it'll be another year or more before it's finished, so I'm not even thinking about what to do next there. And the little sampler for the retreat next year, I think I may replace that. When I finish with that, I may do Harriet Salt, Hands Across the Sea, the Bristol orphanage sampler that I have shown before. because I think I do want to do that, and I have some fabric for it, and I would do it in red. So it's similar. And another thing that I'll be working on this weekend between quilting sessions is the Blackbird Weekend Stitch Along, BBD Weekend Sal is the hashtag. And I won't show that because I showed it at the end of the first weekend in September. You know, that might have been the last video I did. I can't remember. But I'll work on it this weekend and I'll show it next time, whatever I accomplish on it. But the beautiful thing about that weekend Sal thing is that I find that I do I finish a Blackbird item and then I start another Blackbird item. And they are of a type. They are kind of, there's a similarity to them, one similar to another, that makes them sort of, you wouldn't want to necessarily do several at a time, at the same time, but maybe do them sequentially is good. So I do keep thinking about what I want to do next. I have so many options, and don't even get me started on what's on the internet. Okay. I think that's all I wanted to talk about with regard to cross stitch and that quilt. So today in the variety show, I thought I would talk about a category of novels called coming of age novels. And I did not look up a formal definition of coming of age novels because I have my own idea of what it is, and this is my channel, so I'm going to tell you my idea instead of going look something up. So I think that a coming of age novel is a novel about a child or a young teenager who, and it takes place in a certain circumscribed period of time, and something happens. There's some event or series of events in this teenager's life that causes him to grow up in some way. Not necessarily to get a lot older, because it could be a brief period of time, but something happens that changes that young person into a more mature person. Now, almost all of the coming-of-age novels that I have read have been about boys. So I'm not quite sure why that is. Don't know. And the ones I'm going to talk about today are about boys. Are they? Yes, they are all about boys. I'm looking over at my computer because I made a list, because I don't actually own the physical copy of all the books I'm going to mention. But in the description box below are the titles and authors of the books I mention, so that you can Google it and get a copy yourself if you're interested. So the first one I'm going to talk about is, I read this book when Byron and I were first married. I don't remember when it was published, 83, 82, something like that. And I had this idea that I had already talked about this book, but if I have, my apologies to those of you who've been watching a long time. Cold Sassy Tree by Olivan Burns. I can't even remember the name of the boy. Anyway, it's a boy, I think he's 14 in this book, and he lives in a town called Cold Sassy Tree in North Georgia. And this is about him and his family, and particularly his grandfather. When I first read this book, my husband and I had not been married more than a year or two. I said, Byron, you need to read this book and tell me if this reminds me of your family. So he read it and he said, this could be about my family. I said, do you think your mother would be, I mean, there's funny events and sort of preposterous events that happen in it, and preposterous people in a way. Do you think your mother would be offended if I gave her this book for Christmas? And he said, no, I think she would love it. Well, she loved it so much that she bought many copies of it and gave it to people because she thought it was very funny, and she recognized it as being reminiscent of their family. So I do recommend this book, Cold Sassy Tree by Olivan Burns. There was a sequel to it called Return to Cold Sassy, I think was the name of it. I didn't read it. No, I didn't read it. But I read reviews that said it wasn't as good, and so I wasn't interested, because this book is nearly perfect as a coming-of-age novel. Another nearly perfect book, which this is a coming-of-age novel, Peace Like a River by Leif Enger, but it's also a it's also a novel about, it isn't only a coming-of-age novel. This is an amazing book, a beautiful book. I highly recommend this book. It was first introduced to me by Tale for Three Counties in Western New York, which is a group of, used to be, I think they were the Tale for Three Counties program, operated for 14 or so years. And this was their first selection. And they had certain criteria for books that they selected, which this, of course, was the litmus test for all the subsequent books, because it was so fantastic book. But we've read it in our book club twice. Once back when it first was selected by the Tale for Three Counties. The reason I know about Tale for Three Counties is because I have a friend, Leslie, whom I've known since I was born, literally, who retired as a librarian from that system, and she was the head of that Tale for Three Counties, or on the committee for that program. And so she would always tell me what the books were that were selected. So Tale for Three Counties picked this book, Peace Like a River by Leif Enger. One of the best books I've ever read. If I were told you can only read 6 books for the rest of your life, which 6 do you pick? This would be one of them. Excellent book. So that's sort of adventure. I mean, it's a coming-of-age novel. It is. The main character, Ruben, is 14 or 15, maybe 14. And he has a younger sister, Swede, who writes ballad-type poetry about heroes of the Old West. And Davy is his older brother, and he has a father, Jeremiah. And it's about the family and events that happen. Very, very good book. Another book, which I don't have a physical copy of, is Ordinary Grace by William Kent Krueger. Now, William Kent Krueger is an author that I've read many books by. Ordinary Grace is a standalone novel. It is outstanding. It's a beautiful book about faith and families and relationships. Just lovely book. I do recommend it. And it's not too long, and it's about 2 brothers, mainly the older brother, but also about the younger brother. And they're about 12 and 10 or something. So, and there's an older sister and parents. I think that's who there are. I don't think there's yet another child of the family. I think it's just the 3 kids. Anyway, beautiful book. I'll say another word about William Kent Krueger in a minute if I remember, but my brain. Another book that I enjoyed by William Kent Krueger is Last Bus to Wisdom. And this is about a boy who is being raised by his grandmother. I would say this is in the 40s or maybe 30s. It's in the radio era. And his grandmother sends him to her sister, I think, so they live in Montana or someplace like that, someplace out west. And the grandmother sends this boy, who's maybe 13 or 12, to live with her sister for a while. And he doesn't know why, but he's sent to live there. And he makes his way there on a bus, I think, or train. And he has, experiences. And then he and his uncle basically go off together on a bus to get back to the grandmother. And it's a good book. It's sort of a Odyssey kind of book. It's a travel book about this boy and things that he learns. But the funny thing is that it was a book club. Our book club decided to read it. And so one of the people had taken notes of the books we were going to read over the next year. And she wrote that the title of this was Last Bust to Wisdom. And we just had so much fun imagining what the book would be about that was entitled Last Bust to Wisdom. So that was pretty funny. But the book is not about those things. No, it's about last bus to wisdom. That's one reason I say it so carefully. So another word about William Kent Krueger. So both of those books are standalone books, and he, I think, has written other standalone novels, but he's also written a 13 or 14 book series about Cork O'Connor, I think, is the main character. And of course, if I'm going to mention this, I should be able to tell you the first book in that series. Well, sorry, I didn't look it up, and I don't remember. Maybe it will come to me while I'm talking. That happens sometimes. But the beauty of a series is if you like the first book, you can read the second. And if you like the second, you can read the third. And especially a series that is that long. If they continue to be of good quality, then you have hours and hours and hours of enjoyment ahead of you with characters that you already know. And I found that to be true of this series. I don't think I've read all of them. I think that maybe I'm 2 or 3 books behind on it, but very worthwhile series. Cork O'Connor is the main character. If you were to Google William Kent Krueger and look for Cork O'Connor. In fact, I'll put the title of the first book in the series in the description box below. So that'll make it easier for you to find it if you're interested. So the situation in this series is Cork is a former sheriff, as the story opens in the first book. He's a former sheriff. He is part Native American, I can't say the name of the tribe, and part white, and he has a family, and this takes place in northern Minnesota near Lake Superior, and in a smallish town that's near a Native American reservation. So that's sort of the setting. So it's about his kids. He has 2 daughters and a son, and he and his wife are estranged at the beginning of the book due to some circumstances that happened. And anyway, it's mysteries. They are mysteries. There's murder, there's danger, there's adventure, there's violence in these books. So if that kind of thing makes you squeamish, then maybe they're not for you. But if you like a good adventure murder series, this is a good one. I would not call these thrillers. They are not the kind of book that will give you nightmares. They're just good books. They're not coming of age books. That's a different topic. And one last thing I want to say about coming of age is so our book club recently read the book Raft of Stars by Andrew Graff. And it was listed as a coming of age novel. So to me, the reason that, and I don't agree with it, there's my statement. I do not think that it is a coming of age novel. I think it's a novel that happens to have two young boys, 9 years old, as the protagonists, or as the main, I would say, main characters. In fact, I think it's might be even first-person narrative from one of the boys. I can't remember. No, it couldn't be that. I think it's third-person narrative, but two boys are the main characters. And it's an adventure book. It's a good book. It was a very much a page turner. There's some exploration of faith and truth and falsehood and family relationships in the book. It's very good. But the reason I don't think that it qualifies as a coming-of-age novel is because, A, the protagonists, the boys, are too young. They are 9 years old. They are not coming of age in this book. They are children. They're about to turn 10, so they're coming to an age. But this isn't a coming of age. Coming of age needs to be moving forward in maturity. And for the books that have to do with boys, it's boys moving toward manhood. That is what I think has to be true. And in this book, they're not. There's reasons that they're having adventures and interesting reasons. But I don't think that there's growth toward maturity in this book. Now, there's events that could propel them toward maturity, but that isn't what the book is about. So I would say this is not a coming-of-age book, even though it's a good book. We found some interesting things to discuss in it at our book club. So I leave you with that. Again, all of the cross-stitch I mentioned and the books that I mentioned today are in the description box, so you can easily look them up. And I will add a listing of the series by William Kent Krueger, the first book in it, so you can look that up. So that's it. I am really glad to be back making a video this week. I missed doing it. I just couldn't find my way to do it with feeling under the gun on that quilt. And I possibly shouldn't be doing it today, except that I really have missed it. I enjoy making the videos, and I appreciate all of your comments, and that's been really fun to read. I enjoy that. So thank you for that. If you're not subscribed, since I am a little bit irregular, it seems, in making videos, and if you don't want to miss it, then please subscribe. And if you click the notifications bell, you'll be notified when I make a video in case it's not on schedule. I'm not even sure how people are notified about the short that I made. So I don't know. You might look for those. I've tried to post a short if I'm not posting a video, unless I've made it very clear in the previous video that I'm not going to be. But I plan to, next Friday, one way or another, even if it's not a long one, I plan to post a video. So, I think that's all. I hope you have a great week stitching. Any of you who are in the path of this hurricane, or who have been in the path of where the hurricane has been, I hope that you have weathered the storm well. I hope we weathered the storm well. They're supposed to get more storminess later this afternoon. And whether you're traveling or reading or stitching or whatever you're doing, I hope that it all goes well and as you want it to. Many blessings, friends.